Watch collections often focus only on the watches themselves, but if you speak to experienced collectors, one thing you'll find in common with most of them is that there's some kind of process to their collection. So one would think that budget is the most important aspect, but it's actually decision-making discipline over an extended period of time. I'll be going into a few layers or a structured framework for you to follow if you are interested in investing, collecting, or extending your current collection of watches. The first thing would be self-awareness, and I think self-awareness is probably the most important aspect. People, you need to start with a why. If you've got a why for collecting, your collection will immediately make an impact on yourself and your future outlook on watch collecting. You need to know why you actually want that specific timepiece. Now, this could be for aesthetic purposes, it could be because you love the mechanics of the watch, but it could also just be because the brand's pretty cool. And that's fine, but you need to know your why. Once you step into the market and the arena in collecting watches, knowing your why is probably the most important thing. Then self-explanatory would be budget discipline. Now, this would be a simple structure. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Budget discipline just means you know what you can spend on a specific timepiece and within which bracket or brands that budget falls. Don't overextend yourself. In fact, my personal opinion is when you buy your first timepiece, it should be something that you've just always wanted to own. Whether it's worth something or not after you purchase it, don't make that the primary focus, especially not if you are purchasing your first watch to add to your collection. The whole thing or the whole process should be about storytelling. What you should have in mind is, what story is my collection going to tell in 5 to 10 years from now? Then it would also be brand literacy. Brand literacy can just mean something in a very simple sense. It doesn't have to be complicated either. Do you understand where that specific brand fits into the market? Do you know what their range is? Do you know what their historical value of their watches or timepieces are? These are just simple considerations to take into account, but incredibly, incredibly important. Then you would have to look at something like a long-term vision. And I think this is quite hard to think about when you're starting off your collection, because sometimes you're just so excited to get that first timepiece, and that's great. But if you really want to be a structured and smart collector, there must be long-term vision, you know. You can start with something that's reasonably affordable and cheap and maybe doesn't carry any secondary market value. That's fine, as long as you understand where you're working towards, and again, what story do you want your collection to tell. There are a few crucial mistakes that you really need to avoid, and I'll quickly unpack them. So the very first one would be, don't make impulsive buying decisions. You will walk into an authorized dealer and the salesperson's job is to make a sale, right? So if you're going there with the intent to just feel it out and see what's available and what's not, that's fine. But make sure you leave that authorized dealer without having made a purchase. Because if you don't know what you're going to buy, you'll really struggle to find that first item or second or 10th item to your collection that will really matter over the next 5 to 10 years period. So I think not making impulsive quick decisions, incredibly important at the start. Secondly would probably be to understand that servicing your watch, maintenance costs, it's part of that commitment to own a luxury timepiece. You need to feel assured that when you are purchasing a watch, whether it be for $1,000 or for 10 or for 100, that you are fine and comfortable with budgeting for servicing and upkeep of that timepiece. One of the biggest mistakes people make, and especially collectors, is they will hoard watches that don't necessarily mean anything and they will not maintain them. So over time, these watches, never mind deteriorating in value, which is just very brand and market dependent, they actually don't hold internal value anymore. The movements are not functioning properly, and these require attention, the same as cars and luxury vehicles. You need to treat the mindset with a mechanical watch and a quartz watch the same way as you would treat an electric vehicle versus a vintage. Then not being over-focused on one brand. This you also see a lot. People have a Rolex or an Omega or a Breitling craze, and that's great, and you should enjoy the watches. But if you are collecting with a specific goal in mind, if you like a specific brand and you want a few watches in different models or ranges within that brand, that's great. And I think that's a very good way to be collecting watches. But what you shouldn't do is overinvest and overspend in one brand specifically, especially if you want to create the storytelling process with your collection. Then I think one of the last things we should touch on is purchasing for resale value. Now, a lot of people do this, especially with the hype craze going on and the hype craze that passed over the past 3-4 years. And people were purchasing watches to try and sell immediately on the secondary market, but that's no way to collect. That is a business on its own. You are purchasing an item to sell, but you're not collecting watches to tell the story. So I think buying for secondary or resale value, it's a big no-no. I would avoid that. So if you look at all of this in a nutshell, the most crucial elements to starting your collection or continuing with a strong collection would be self-awareness, your why you want to actually purchase a specific timepiece. Have extreme budget and decision-making discipline. It's crucial. You will avoid making really expensive mistakes that often can't be corrected. So when you take the opportunity to next purchase a luxury timepiece, think about why you're actually collecting, and it will make a lot more sense going forward.